We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. It is Saturday by the time you hear this. We are fortunate to have Ed with us again. Now, Ed was going to be with us last week, but it wasn't Ed's fault. It was my fault. My wife had a fall at work, and at first they thought it was just sprains, and now we find out she's got a break or two in her shoulder, a break or two in her ribs. She's in a
Oh,
sling. She's in a little pain. She's getting better now, so that's good. But just before Ed and I were going to go on, I got the call and said, meet me at the hospital. So we had to forego the talk with Ed, and we missed it. I know a lot of people out there missed it, but you are back now.
yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear Cindy is okay,
Yeah,
but
she's
I
okay, but she's in pain.
yeah, I mean that's a fall like that is at any point in life is not good, but fractures and sprains and all of that. I spend more time trying not to fall down than anything else because it can be catastrophic. I mean, I know it hastened the demise of my mother. She
Yeah.
broke a hip, and then she broke another hip, and then she broke an arm, and all of those are debilitating.
Yeah, absolutely. When you do get older, I remember running up and down stairs and doing all that stuff. I don't do that anymore. Um, I don't know that I have a fear of falling, but I certainly don't like the concept.
And it's funny. I mean, I lived in Minnesota for 50 years, and I had a couple of falls, two that I thought were significant. I had no damage in either case, but I mean, I it was on icy streets in both cases. And once I jumped over a snowbank, and there was ice on the other side, and I just whoop, bam. And another time it was just I was walking along, hit some leaves, down I went. No damage in either case, but the worst ever was right here where it hardly ever snows, and there
Yeah.
was some black ice I didn't see, and I don't even remember falling. I don't remember
Wow.
any of it. It was so quick. I just remember lying on my back with my dog looking at me, going, "What the hell are you doing?" And the only soreness I had was on the top of my head. So my feet flew out from under me so quickly and at such speed that I landed on top of my head, which
Wow.
is weird. I mean, to be to do that. And that was just walking, no speed, nothing, just zoop, bam. And fortunately, I was wearing one of those hats that have the big fuzzy ears that you tie
Yeah.
at the top and all of that. So
So
that
you
kind
had
of
some
cushioned
cushion.
it. Yeah. But
My
yeah, those are the three falls I've had in my life. But I do watch out, and I use handrails, and I carry a cane when I'm out walking
yeah,
for protection as well as for keeping from falling down. But we all get to that point. We're a little shaky. We all
we're a little
do.
shaky. My most embarrassing fall was about 10, 12 years ago. I was living in our house in that suburb, Rogers. Um, and I was outside with my dog and I was walking around a house. We had a little pattern we'd do when he'd have to go to the bathroom. We'd walk around the house and I'm walking on the inside. He's walking on the outside. And I'm looking at my phone, for whatever reason. I'm looking at my phone. I'm not paying attention. And I step and all of a sudden, I feel myself not fall, but just drop, just
Yeah.
fucking drop. And it was surreal and it was weird. I don't know if I fell into a fucking vortex or what it was.
I'm sure
But
that
what
was
I
it.
did, no, it wasn't a vortex.
Oh, shoot.
I walked into an egress window.
Oh
I
my
stepped,
God.
I stepped over it.
Yeah.
I stepped down and just dropped. And when I dropped, I hit my ribs and my arm against the side, the metal sides, the corrugated side. And I'm in pain, but I'm sitting there. I go, I got to get out. Now, the egress window came up to my nose. And
Yeah.
because my arm was screwed up, there was no way to get out.
Mm.
There was no way to get out of it. And my dog just laid next to me, which surprised me. I thought he'd bolt the fuck out of there. And my
Yeah.
phone was a little out of my reach. And I give my dog credit. He pushed the phone closer to me. Now
Wow.
I'm trying to get out because I'm worried my wife is going to freak out.
Hmm.
I fell and I hurt. And so I got the phone, and the only thing I can do is I call my wife. I said, "Now just settle down. Just settle down. I'm fine, but I need you to go get me a ladder in the garage and bring it to me to the egress window because I got to get out." She goes, "What happened? What happened?" And I tried to explain to her. I said, just come and do it, and just don't freak out because I know you freak out about stuff like this. She comes around the corner. My dog's just sitting there going, I don't know what the fuck to do. And and she comes around the corner with the ladder, and I thought she would freak out. Instead, she just drops the ladder. She starts laughing. She takes a picture of me with my head just sticking out of the egress window and sends it to my son, who then in turn runs it up Facebook to every family member, every friend that could possibly see it. And then she gave me the ladder and I got out and I was in pain. So I appreciate the sympathy I got in that motherfucker. And that photo is still around and I still get chided for it.
Well,
Anyway,
now we all want to see it, so you might as well just post
yeah, I'll probably have to find it and post it. But let's talk about what's going on because, we were talking beforehand. Uh, I've said this before. I said, I've always believed at some point the Republicans would wake up and say, this is going to fuck us over. We need to push back. And while we're seeing some cracks of that happening, never in my wildest dreams did I imagine it'd take this long and we'd go through this much shit before the Republicans have had enough. But apparently they haven't had enough as yet.
Now, I think I've said this before. When you go back to Newt Gingrich, when he started primarying the sensible Republicans or anybody who would stand up against whatever wackiness they wanted to put forward. And really, we have reached a point, I think, where there are no or very few, very, very, very few Republicans who have any grasp on what democracy is or what oligarchy is, or they just see it as a benefit for themselves and they're going to grab everything they can. And when you see people like Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene who come in as somehow get elected and come into Congress without a pot to piss in, and that now they're millionaires. You understand what's going on here. It is
Yeah.
simply unscrupulous people aggrandizing themselves at the expense of the American people. That's what's going on, and every Republican is guilty of it. And I'm not going to say that every Democrat is innocent because many of them do it. You can just track the individual worth of a person when they're elected. 4 years later, see where they are, and you know what's going on. They're being fed stock tips, they're being given money in some way or another behind the hand, under the table, however it is. They go from being an average person to a millionaire before you know it. And that's simply the case. And that's, now they just vote however they're told. And that's it. And I'm really glad to see this pushback at particularly Republican town halls that people are starting to see that, and so there are reasonable, I would think, because these aren't paid Democrats, no matter what they say, they aren't. These
No.
are in most cases actual constituents who voted for these people, and they're calling them to task and saying, why are you trying to take away my Social Security? Why are you trying to get rid of Medicaid? Why are you canceling preschool lunches? Why are you doing all of these things that benefit lower and middle class people while you're putting more and more tax breaks in for people who don't need them? The billionaires, the oligarchs, and so forth. And at any rate, there are no good Republicans left that have any power. Let's put it that way. And it's
Yeah,
that simple.
absolutely. And it was funny. I heard Donald Trump say something that is in line with the type of thing he would say. But he said that he was upset by the disruptors at these town hall meetings. And he told the Republicans, you shouldn't be nice to them, which is code for go ahead, kick their ass, which
Yeah.
I find interesting because, as you pointed out, it isn't Democratic disruptors, it's Republicans. So, can you imagine Republican security or whatever it is beating up other Republicans? That would be wonderful. I'm all for it. Yeah, go kick their ass.
Yeah, I look around and I see things like my wife and I were very staunch Twins fans when we lived in Minnesota. After we moved, we kind of got away from it because finding the games or watching them and so forth, it was just difficult. So we pretty much got away from watching baseball, right? But
Yeah.
then recently, my wife noticed that Major League Baseball was carrying these streaming packages where you could follow a team no matter where you were. Some games are blacked out, but mostly not. So we got back into watching the Twins, and we've really gotten back into it. We're getting to know the players again and so forth. And I suddenly noticed something that I had never noticed before, and that was how many of Major League Baseball players, the starters, are Hispanic. I think
Yeah.
it's like 30%. And there's, what is it? I think it's 289 of them, somewhere in that are here on specific visas. I think they're called
Right.
IP or P1 visas. That's what they are. And then those in the minor leagues are on a separate kind of visa, right? I wonder when Trump is going to start deporting Major League Baseball players on teams that he bets against. I'm just thinking that's probably coming.
Well, yeah, you wonder, well, whenever they do something to piss him off, again, we've got people owning baseball teams that are billionaires too.
Right,
Um,
exactly.
a- and when I think about those baseball teams, I'm sure they're just trying to stay out of it because they don't want to be part of that. Anybody that has any sense at all should not want to stand next to Donald Trump and appear as though that he's being friendly, he or she is being friendly to them. But we saw this. I bring this up because we both worked in media, and you were a news person. I was a little bit. But this whole thing was 60 Minutes.
Mhm.
And 60 Minutes, the reporter comes out and acknowledges we don't like this any more than you do as far as, avoiding negative stuff about Donald Trump. But our parent company, Paramount, is trying to do a merger and they don't want to do anything to piss off Donald Trump until after the merger. That is where journalism has come to at this point. Money over truth, money over facts. And that's where we are. And CBS with 60 Minutes has been a paragon of journalism and honesty and truthfulness. Now we can't even trust them.
Right, exactly. And this has been going on for some time. Let me give you an example. Before you and I worked together, we were both out in the hinterland. You were in, excuse me, New Ulm, Minnesota, if I remember right, right?
And the middle of nowhere, Arizona before that. I
Yeah,
was in New Prague, actually.
New Prague, that's it. And I knew you worked at a polka station, so did I. I started in Iowa and I moved to Faribault, Minnesota for my second job. Stayed there for 3 years and until the station got sold and they replaced all the staff. And my wife and I decided to move back to the Twin Cities, and eventually it worked out great because we wound up working together at a public radio station. But at any rate, that's a little biographical background. But when I was in Faribault, the guy who owned the station was like many, kind of a curmudgeonly old guy who had every penny he'd ever made. He would go on a fishing trip to Canada every year, and he'd take $100 with him and have it converted into Canadian quarters, so he could come back and get his newspaper for a nickel cheaper by using a Canadian quarter. I mean, this is the guy. This tells you all you really need to know. Okay. But I remember that we had a news director, and he comes to me in the studio and he goes, "I'm really pissed off, but I don't know what to do." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he says, "Well, at that time in Faribault, they had what we would call today an asylum. And that wasn't what they called it, but that's what it was. Had mental patients in it.
Right.
And this was in the Reagan era where they started closing them, right? And
Right.
the I'll give the station owner credit because he was thinking of the local economy because there were lots of jobs involved with this. I mean, a large number of people in Faribault worked at that facility in one way or another, and they also had vendors and so forth that supplied all the needs, and so it would have an impact on the local economy. So he called the news director in, and he said, "I want you to start interviewing a lot of people, and your job is going to be to turn public opinion totally against closing this facility. I don't want it to be balanced. I don't want it to in any way reflect that there might be some sort of benefit to the state for closing these or to the people in it. I just want you to totally take the other side in every story you do, and I want at least one story a week. Well, the guy caved and did it, and I couldn't blame him because I'm sure he would have gotten fired if he hadn't, and the guy would have just the station owner would have just hired somebody who would have. But that's an example. That's an example that of what does happen when sales or an individual influences a news department. Um, me and the news guy butted heads all the time because he was very conservative. I was very liberal and so forth. But I did consider him to be pretty ethical. I mean, he wasn't publishing false stuff. But in this case, he was forced to take one side of an issue and pummel it. Ultimately, the facility was closed, so it was wasted effort anyway. But you see that with Jeff Bezos and the Washington Post changing the editorial policy and so forth. And you see it with many others as well. And it started. I don't know if it was the '60s or the '70s where the sales department started running the news department rather than the news director, and it's been going on ever since. You notice it everywhere in smaller markets. You didn't see it as much on the national scene, but now you do. And I congratulate the folks at 60 Minutes for standing up and saying, hey, we are being told what to do. This is not our doing. That took some guts.
It took some guts and it took some integrity. There isn't a lot of integrity in the media these days. We were talking about Donald Trump's interview with
Yeah.
Terry Moran.
Yeah.
I wasn't even I didn't even watch it because I thought it would be just another one of Donald Trump's uh, bullshit lines that he spews the same thing every day, and there would be no pushback. And as I saw the clips of it, obviously there was some pushback. Now, some people will say there wasn't enough, and I probably agree with that. But again, this is under pressure of your job. You can only go so far. And I was surprised by Terry Moran going as far as he did.
Yeah, so was I. I was proud of him, quite frankly, because, as you say, if there's pushback, there can be pushback, and because well, in the case of 60 Minutes, it was the merger that of course was dictating what was done and what was not. But also Trump has been known to just get up and walk out.
Right,
If you push too hard and he knows he's losing, he'll just, well, this is a waste of time, up and gone, right? He's done that
right,
several
right.
times. And so you got to walk that fine line. I thought the reporter did a pretty good job of doing that. And it's hard because Trump always does he did what he always does, and that is attack the reporter for the question, calling it dumb or talking about how they're always asking stupid questions or that they're nasty. That's his favorite thing. You're a very nasty person, and you want the reporter to say, I'm rubber and you're glue or whatever. But I mean, the nastiest person anywhere is Donald Trump, quite simply.
Yeah.
He's
Well,
getting caught. He knows he has no way out, so he just reverts to that. The reporter stood up to him, and I was glad to see it.
well, I mean, a couple of things he talked about. The economy was brought up and how the economy is tanking, the stock market is dropping, the GDP is shrinking. And Donald Trump said, well, that's Joe Biden's economy, which I found ironic because toward the end of Biden's term, Donald Trump was taking credit for the economy. That's my economy because I'm going to get elected president. Everybody's excited. And it went so well toward the end there that just after Joe Biden left, the stock market, the Dow Jones hit a record high of 45,000 points.
Yeah,
It's now down around 40,000 points.
yeah.
And now he's trying to suggest it's Biden's fault. That's just not the case, and so typical of Donald Trump, his childish behavior. No, I didn't do that. It's not my fault. Because Donald Trump can never admit he's wrong. He can't step back. It's just humanly impossible for him to admit anything wrong.
I don't know, I don't know if it's that Republicans in general, especially MAGA types, just don't pay attention or if they just don't sample media other than Fox News and the other really right-wing ones. I'm sure that's probably the thing. But the level of lying in this administration, not only from Trump, but from all of the people he appointed, all of the Republicans in Congress, all of the his spokespeople and so forth. The level of lying is just insane. A good
Yeah.
example here: Pete Hegseth, puts out this post on social media about how they just canceled this program in the armed forces I don't remember the name of it, but it had to do with the success of women and so forth, and how awful it was and terrible and rotten and stupid, and how proud he was to just put the screws to it and blah blah blah. Yeah, it goes on and on. And then we
Right.
find out this was a program that was instigated by Ivanka Trump during the first Trump administration. And it was the hallmark of what she was able to accomplish. And at the time, Trump trumpeted it as a really terrific thing. Well, 5 minutes later, Hegseth is back on. Well, the Biden screwed it up. Biden screwed it up. It was a great program, and then Biden screwed it up, so we had to cancel it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's there's a lot of things that Donald Trump is attacking that were things that he installed in our government when he was in office the first time. The thing that was the most pitiful, I think, when they were talking about Kilmar Abrega Garcia and getting him back, and when the pressure got hot, Donald Trump pivoted to trying to explain how bad a guy Kilmar Abrega Garcia was. And then he said, "Did you see the picture of his hand where it said MS-13 on it?" And
Yeah,
Tony Moran said, "Yeah, that was photoshopped." And Donald
yeah,
Trump seemed taken aback. He says,
yeah.
"You think it's photoshopped? This is why people don't trust you because you're always lying." And he insisted that this MS-13 was on this gentleman's fist, and it was photoshopped. In fact, if you look at the picture,
You can tell.
well, it wasn't even intended to be a tattoo. It was
No,
basically trying to identify what they felt each one of the tattoos below it were. They were saying, "See, marijuana, that's the and going so forth." But Donald Trump was so bought into this, and what I thought was amazing was Tony Moran gave him an out, and he should have took it. But
yeah,
Donald Trump could not admit he's wrong. And he was so upset about this that toward the end, he goes, I don't know why you can't just agree with me. Well, because you're wrong, motherfucker. It's a lie. He
yeah.
didn't even get it. And this was my question. I was wondering what you think about this. When he was doing that with the MS-13 tattoo that really wasn't a tattoo, that was bullshit, was he so bought into the lie that he kept doubling down? Or was it that he didn't know? I get the impression he didn't know, and it's not surprising he doesn't know some things because I think the people around him only tell him things he wants to hear, and he may misinterpret and he doesn't listen. I don't know. I think he believed that tattoo actually existed.
I think he
Uh,
did too.
yeah,
Um, I What people forget about Donald Trump is that he is stupid.
yeah,
He
he is
does two
stupid.
things. He plays golf and he shoots off his mouth on social media. Stays
Right.
up late, takes Adderall, whatever, or
It's
something.
his pants.
Yeah, but and that for sure. But I doubt he knows how to operate a computer. I bet he barely knows how to operate a cell phone. He does not know how to drive. He's never driven a car. He can drive a golf cart, apparently. But all those photo ops of him in the garbage truck and all of that, he can't drive. He doesn't drive anything. He is very limited in scope as to what he can do because he's never had to. If you've always had a driver, you don't learn to drive. He talks about going to a grocery store. He's never bought anything in a grocery store. He doesn't know what they cost. He doesn't know the procedure in doing it. I remember when he was talking about health insurance when he was running the first time, and he's talking about health insurance policy, right? and I remember, I can't quote him directly, but I'll paraphrase pretty accurately. He said, you pay for every year for several years, you pay your payments, and later when you're older, you have a valid policy. That's, of course, life insurance. It has nothing to do with medical insurance, but he did not know that. He claims to be a Christian, claims to love the Bible, has never opened one, not even his own. For example, the Constitution that they print in those Trump Bibles, it leaves out
Yeah,
several amendments. Were you
yeah,
aware of that?
I was.
That this is just the kind of insane stuff. He knows nothing. He tells people to do stuff, and however they do it, that's fine with him as long as they do what he tells them to. But he's not a smart man. He's not even an average intelligence. He's not even of an average intelligence. He's below that. He can barely read, um, and that people see him as some sort of messiah is insane to me.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I think we're in for a large number of people with a mental breakdown
Hmm.
because they are in a cult. They support him no matter what he does. But when things become apparent, I think we're on the precipice of a catastrophe for a lot of folks that is finally going to wake some of them up. Not all of them, because Trumplafucks will be Trumplafucks and there's no changing that. But we're sitting here with a similar situation to what we have with COVID, the breakdown of the supply chain.
Hmm.
And we know what that did to everything as far as increasing prices and doing all that stuff. And we're in that position now. And I feel like we're kind of in a holding pattern for people because people aren't feeling the pinch quite enough yet. I mean, some are farmers and people who have been fired, they're upset. But we're literally a couple of weeks away from uh, shelves being empty. And that's, we're not exaggerating that. The fact of the matter is, China have stopped ships coming
Yeah,
here.
exactly.
And that
And
makes a big difference. And it's not just shelves being empty, it's jobs being lost and money being lost. And people's ways of life is going to be changed. If you like the trickle down effect, there's going to be a trickle down effect from this situation, and it's coming. And I think some people are just going to be like deer in the headlights. They won't know what hit them. I mean, you and I do, but the dumb
yeah,
fucks don't.
yeah, and I've been doing a lot on TikTok lately, reminding people of what's coming with nursing homes, for example. 80% of the residents of nursing homes are paid for by Medicaid, and that's because they liquidate assets when the time comes. I think it's like there's a 3-year margin or something. You can hand off your assets to your progeny and so forth, then they're protected because otherwise, if you go in a nursing home on Medicaid, they can seize your assets. I think they'll leave you a certain amount per month or something like that. But
Yeah.
any homes that you own or anything like that would be uh, taken by the state and so forth to pay for your care, right? Which is
Right.
reasonable. You're getting a lot of care, and it's costing something, but it's covered by Medicaid in most cases because people have no resources. Now, at the point where Medicaid is cut to the point where that isn't happening anymore, then people are going to have to take back maybe you've got two sets of parents in a nursing home. They may be suffering from dementia or other major health problems that are being cared for in the nursing home. Suddenly, you're going to have to put them in your garage or something, or they're going to
Right.
park them on the street because the facility is going to close and there's nothing that can be done about it. Same for rural hospitals. Mostly they exist because of Medicaid payments, because the patients are poor. In most cases, they can't afford to pay for the hospital bill. Medicare kicks in and takes care of a portion of it at least. That is how they manage to exist. Rural hospitals will close. It's that simple. Right here in my area, the two hospitals closest to me, I'm sure will close. And they've been reduced already, amazingly, to all kind of like clinics and so forth. They don't do, in my local hospital here, they don't do operations. They don't do anything like that. They basically, the emergency room stays open so they can do triage before they helicopter or ambulance somebody to the nearest real hospital. But that's one more stage that, it's a big difference if you're bleeding out. It's a big difference for a 5 minute ambulance ride to a hospital where they can stabilize you, and a 45-minute drive to the nearest medical facility, or even longer, or maybe a shorter helicopter ride. But a helicopter ride will cost you $15,000, $20,000. People don't
Right.
realize that.
Well, my wife fell down at work. She was in Bloomington, and she was sent down the road in an ambulance, uh, maybe 6, 7 miles.
Yeah,
We're not going to pay the bill. That's going to come from
insurance.
the company, insurance, or workman's comp or something like that.
Yeah,
But that ambulance ride was $2,600 to go
there you
about
go.
7 miles.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
shit's expensive. Are you feeling any hope in hearing what we're hearing about some Republicans getting a little hinky about signing on this bill? I know they want to pass this big beautiful bill that's going to take money from Medicaid, and now we're seeing some Republicans going, I don't know, this could be a problem in 2026. It seems like some of them are finally getting it.
I hope so, and especially those from states like Arkansas, Oklahoma, and to an extent here, Tennessee. It's going to impact the red states more, just because so many of the residents are dependent on these programs,
Right.
not only Medicaid, but also SNAP and that sort of thing. And once those go, not only do they affect the poor people who are involved, but their buying power is taken out of the economy.
Right.
And that means that all of the businesses will suffer, because the people who used to come in with their EBT card won't be coming in anymore. And we're
Right.
seeing people whose EBT cards being raided already. I think that's a scam, but who knows? Who knows where the scam's coming from? I mean, Elon Musk is nothing but a scam. This whole operation of finding fraud and waste and so forth is nothing but a scam. He's using it to enrich himself, cancel contracts, and put himself in place of his companies, in place of contracts that were already signed, sealed, and delivered. He's doing that. We know that. That should put him in prison.
Don't you think the Elon era is just about over though? Because
Yeah, I think it
um,
is. I think he's checked out.
I think he's checked out, and I think Donald Trump wants to get rid of him. Tesla is talking about firing him as a CEO, and Elon's doing exactly what Donald Trump is doing. First of all, I think if Tesla gets rid of Elon, it doesn't help. The damage
No,
has been
they're
done.
down. They're done.
They're not going to come. The only thing they could possibly do, and I said this on the previous podcast, get a better CEO with a good PR campaign, change the name of Tesla, and redesign the cars to be better than what they've been, the same thing for 10 years or whatever. That's the
Yeah,
only
they're
thing
a
they can
bad
do to
product.
save it. Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
a bad product. Their self-driving shit doesn't work. They all have to have a driver, so it's not self-driving. They can't go in snow. They blow up. It's a bad product. I mean, I forget how many car fires it took to get rid of the Pinto, and the same thing with unsafe at any speed, the Chevrolet. I can't remember the name of it now, Corvair.
Corvair. Yeah.
Teslas are far worse than either of those. More fires, more deaths, and all of that. Much worse than either the Pinto or the Corvair. And yet they continue. And the truck is just stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the truck is embarrassingly, it's a douche machine. But no, but I heard Elon say something just yesterday. He said, "Yeah, I'm thinking about leaving Tesla because they're not paying me enough as CEO."
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they're going to kick your ass out, you punk ass bitch, because you fucked that company over immensely. I don't see how Tesla comes back over this. And I don't know that we're going to see Elon in the news as much anymore because it's done nothing but bring negative attention to the Trump administration.
Yeah, and I'm glad that happened. I'd like to see the mighty fall, especially where they don't deserve it. I mean, let's face it, Elon Trump is nothing but a mentally challenged guy who had a lot of money given to him by his father and a ruthlessness that allowed him to take over companies. He's invented nothing. He's done nothing. All he's done is take over companies and cut the workforce and make people work harder. That's all he's done, period.
Yeah, absolutely. He sounds a lot like Donald Trump because Donald Trump has done
Exactly.
pretty much the same thing. Um, the so Elon will go the way of he'll fade off into the mist. I think ultimately, when Democrats get control, there's going to be some investigations about some of the things he did with Social Security,
Yep.
little techno twinks with him, because there were some laws broken. And while Donald Trump and Pam Bondi aren't going to do anything about it, uh, the uh, it'll be short enough time where they'll still be able to be investigated and probably prosecuted. You almost have to. You can't do the things they did and just let it go.
Another thing I got to jump into here. Did you see his cabinet meeting the other day or any outtakes from it where he had everybody sitting around the round table with a red hat in front of them, and then they had to each go around and praise him. Now, he did this the first term too,
Yeah.
and this smacks so much of North Korea. Now, I'm not an expert on North Korea now, but I used to be one because when I was in the military, that was my area of expertise. I knew everything there was to know about North Korea, and quite frankly, it hasn't changed that much. But that was a regular feature for not Kim, the current Kim, but it would have been his grandfather at the time.
Okay.
Nothing has changed. They use the same systems and everything that they did because. But that's it. Elevating the great leader to this semi-divine state, and that nothing he does is wrong, everything he does is right, and that they, snap to attention. And Trump has always said he wants his people to do that too, and so forth. And everything that they do in North Korea is a show to enhance the great leader, and that's what wants here. I mean, he's planning this big military parade for his birthday. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I know he wanted it the first term too, and it would be incredibly expensive. It would destroy the roads in D.C. because they're not prepared to take these military vehicles, the weight of them, and so forth. And it's just stupid. But we see this, and why cannot Republicans see this? See the road that we're headed down? Don't they realize that oligarchs always turn on the people? And you saw this with Hitler, with his brown shirts that he eventually murdered, the people
Ah,
that put him in power. And I got something to say about brown shirts later too. But this is what we see here. We see this so plain. Why can't they see it? Or do they see it and they just don't care?
or they're cowards. Well, when you talk about this parade, the information about this parade leaked out, and we know how Donald Trump hates leakers. But
Yeah.
what is proposed in this parade is 6,600 military soldiers in this thing, 150 military vehicles, 50 helicopters, and maybe thousands of civilians.
And of
I
course,
mean, this is
flyovers.
and flyovers. This is essentially this is the essence of a dictator, a self-aggrandizing dictator who wants everybody to applaud him. He loves the adulation, and I don't know that he understands that the majority of the people in this country not only won't vote for him anymore, they don't like the motherfucker. I mean,
Mhm.
he had a rally in Michigan, and I kept trying to find out how many people showed up at that rally, and I couldn't find it reported anywhere until I came across somebody on TikTok who was there and had a video camera, and it turns out there were 4,000 people that showed up. There were more people outside protesting than were in the rally. but Donald Trump would make you believe the biggest rally ever. But I did love how Bernie Sanders got a little petty.
Yeah.
And he said, "Hey, congratulations on your rally of 4,000 people. By the way, me and AOC had 30,000 at our last one." That has to stick in Donald Trump's craw a little bit.
Yeah. And I worry for Bernie and AOC. I worry for him.
Do you really?
Yeah, let's talk about the brown shirts. The Gestapo, the brown shirts were Hitler's, or the mustache man, if you want to call him whatever, were his initial supporters, right?
Right, right,
And then once he was firmly in and established, he had them all killed.
right,
Right now, Trump is using ICE in that fashion. Nobody, they did not expand ICE in order to do this. What they're doing is they're using these bounty hunters and Proud Boys and all of these white supremacist fucks that they don't really have any sort of a credential. And that's why you see them not offering credentials. You know, maybe there's
right.
one ICE agent and the rest of them are these thugs. And like this family that they just raided this home and it was the wrong house, but they kept these women outside in their underwear and so forth and were just brutal and so forth. Um, this has got to stop. And I noticed, I think it was either Pam Bondi or one of those saying that no, I guess it was might have been Patel. It was one of them saying that they're going to start arresting officials in sanctuary cities. And if I were one of those officials, if I were a mayor or somebody like that, I would make sure I was always surrounded by marshals and policemen. And when ICE shows up, they would be arrested and imprisoned and then deported
Yeah.
out of my state because they don't have enough of them at this point to do what they're trying to do. It's like with the judge. I mean, they showed up with an administrative subpoena, which has no real weight. It was not issued by a judge. So she could quite easily have said, call the police and get these fucks out of here. She chose not to. I'm not sure why, but that's what she should have done.
Well, I'm sure they're scared and it's a government coming for you. You don't
Mm.
know the difference between an administrative subpoena and a court subpoena. These people are put in a position where they're just terrified, and that's the whole point of what they're doing. You know, we were talking about that interview, and regarding deportations, Donald Trump said something, and as he always does, he implicates himself. But when Terry Moran was talking to him, he said, "Look, man, you're the president of the United States. You could call the president down in El Salvador and send Abrega Garcia back. You could do that." And Donald Trump says, because his ego couldn't stop him from doing it, he says, "Yeah, I could." And at that moment in time, he basically implicated himself in obstructing justice, in
Yep.
ignoring what the courts are telling him. He had been telling him, and his lawyers have been telling the courts, we can't do anything about it because it's not under our jurisdiction. Now Donald Trump says, yeah, I could do that, but I just refuse. I hope this comes back to haunt him. I hope this comes up in the court case because he basically confessed that he's denying doing what the court's telling him he must legally do.
And I may be wrong on this, but it seems to me from what I read that the Supreme Court controls or the courts control federal marshals. I think
Right.
the courts could send federal marshals to El Salvador and say, we want this guy.
Well, the one thing I've heard, I'm going to Google this now, but the federal marshals may be under the purview of uh,
Is it Justice Department?
the DOJ. Yeah, and if that's the case, then Pam Bondi can just say, uh, "Hold on a second."
You may be right.
Well, that's what I've heard, and I'm not sure if it's true, so I'm going to just fucking check it right now. Um, U.S. Marshal Service is a federal law enforcement agency, is part of the U.S. Department of Justice. The agency is under the purview of the Attorney General and
Okay.
goes to enforce federal law. So that basically means the courts can call out the federal marshals but then Pam Bondi and Donald Trump could say, "Yeah, nah, don't go." That's
Hmm.
that's the catch-22 we have here. We have ways to enforce these courts, but the people who oversee the people that would do the enforcement are the fucking criminals.
Hmm. Yeah, that's it makes it very difficult, and that's why that's we're going to have to look at some stuff. And when this is all said and done, there needs to be more safety nets. There needs to be more walls built around certain things that no president, I mean, in the Supreme Court, I blame, of course, for their immunity decision, which was stupid because sooner or later, even if it wasn't Trump, and of course it is, sooner or later you'd get somebody who wanted to abuse the system. If Nixon could have done it, he would have done it. If Reagan could have done
Yeah.
it, he would have done it. If Bush could have done it, he would have done it because of what they did do. Okay. We know that they did criminal things that they were not held accountable for. In the case of Reagan, it was collaborating with Iran and the death squads and all of that. He did stuff that would have gotten him impeached and imprisoned. With Bush, it was creating false evidence and presenting it as the truth and so forth. So and these like for example the sending people to El Salvador. Bush did it with individuals that they wanted to torture to get information to these quote black sites in various and sundry places. They did it. They should be in prison for that and maybe get a taste of it themselves. This has been going on with Republican administrations at least since Nixon, where they seem to think that whatever they think is the law is the law. It's not true, and the fact that they weren't forced to have consequences, of course. They let Nixon get off with resigning, and then Ford pardoned him. He should have been prosecuted. He should have been prosecuted and put in prison. It's that simple. Same
Yeah.
with Reagan. They let him off because he was a vegetable by the time that it was all uncovered. What are you going to do?
Do you think the Supreme Court regrets doing that now?
I
Because
do.
they're looking at the possibility of losing some of their own power.
Well, this is the thing, and why they couldn't see that, I have no idea. Maybe they could. You have to remember, there are people on the court who you have the liberals um, who, to me, have been fairly uh, restrained. They've actually gone along with some things I wouldn't have gone along with, but
Yeah.
they give their opinions and so forth, and that's it. But then you have Amy Coney Barrett is really stepped up. She has shown herself to be a little more independent than I would have expected. So I give her
Yeah.
props for that. Now she was part of that decision, of course. I think certainly she must regret it. Um, the Of course you've got the four guys that are just waste of space. I mean, they're so indoctrinated that they're a waste of time. I can tell you how they're going to vote on anything because I
Yeah.
know what the talking points from the Heritage Foundation are.
Yeah. Well, you've got Alito and Clarence Thomas, who are the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
And then you've got Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, who are bad, maybe not as bad as Alito and Clarence Thomas. Then you've got John Roberts, and John Roberts is sometimes showed a spine, and sometimes he's not. They probably regret what they did with Donald Trump, but when we look at what's going on, we've got federal court judges and district judges. These people are getting death threats every day. Um, then they go and arrest uh, uh, judge in Wisconsin, which I think ultimately will be a mistake. And then we get this Carolyn Levitt, this spokesperson, this bimbo that speaks for Donald Trump, who's 26 years old and doesn't know fuck all about fuck all. And she even says, if we have to, we wouldn't be opposed to arresting a Supreme Court justice. And my answer
Hmm.
to that is please do. Please arrest a Supreme Court justice. I want to see that.
Hmm.
There has to be a point when the court has to figure out a way to deal with this situation because of what they let run wild with Donald Trump. It's now impugning or impinging on them. It's affecting them. There's got to be a point they're going to want to do something. I just don't know what they can do.
What would have to happen is the court and the Congress would have to join hands and say we're two-thirds of the governing. There are three equal segments to our government. The Constitution is quite obvious about that. So we are both agreeing that this president needs to be removed, and this is how it's going to happen. And we've joined with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They will give us the muscle we need to do that. Um, and the military would either respond positively or negatively, and if it was negative, of course, we would be in a full blown um,
Constitutional
well,
crisis.
not even a constitutional crisis, but if the military failed to act, it would be oligarchy forever, or in this case, it would be just a dictatorship from Trump if they failed to act, because there would be no other constraints on him at that point, and he would probably go ahead and arrest them all and get rid of the court or replace them with his flunkies and so forth, um,
But
which
like you
they're
say,
trying to do.
didn't they see that? Didn't they see that? Or are they just so arrogant? That's the thing is I've said before, I'm not I understand the ignorance, I understand the incompetence, but when you throw arrogance on top of it, it's just it's just a dangerous mix, a dangerous recipe. Arrogance, ignorance, and incompetence, that can only go bad.
I think some of them were with it from the beginning and they were just fine with it. I think there is within the Heritage Foundation who picked most of these guys and
Yeah.
women, or at least one of them. They had this in mind. They really want a Christian, quote, Christian nationalist government. That's what the Heritage Foundation wants, without a doubt. And so they picked people that they thought would do their best to carry that out. And in large part, they were right about it. But I think in Comey Barrett's case, they were wrong. She seems to, although she might give lip service to a certain part of that, maybe she's having some hesitancy in actually following through on it. But that was the idea. And that's why you're seeing things like this Office of Anti-Christian Bias, right? Which
Right.
basically means that anytime anybody points out something that a semi-religious group is doing that they shouldn't be doing, that's seen as bias, right?
Right. Right.
And that's they said the FBI was going after Catholics. No, the FBI was investigating these very right-wing Catholics. Probably best poster boy for him is Mel Gibson. I mean, this guy's
Yeah.
a wacko, but this is
Yeah. He's
solid
wacko.
mainstream stuff for these conservative Catholics. It's not the Catholics that Pope Francis was, the Pope of. This is a different group of people who see anything Vatican II. They would like to roll everything back there and go back.
Hmm.
Anytime you hear somebody talk about the traditional Latin Mass, you know they're part of that group. That's the watchword. Words. Watch out for them.
You mentioned the military, and if the military was to do something, I mean, at this point, we don't even have a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff because he fired
Nope.
him. He has not replaced him. Um, if the Republicans got a spine and saw the writing on the wall that they are going to get wiped out in the 26 midterms, and they got together with the courts, how do you think the military would respond? I mean, it's kind of like going back to the federal marshals and the DOJ overseeing them. You can sick the federal marshals on people not following the rules or the orders of the court, but if the DOJ has power over them, they're not going to do anything. Do you think there is some way in the military where there will be a point where there's too much and the military would push back, or will they just bend to Donald Trump because he's the president? Do you think there's ever a
I
time when people will go against the president in the military?
I haven't seen it yet. I mean, if they were going to do it, it would have been Nixon era where he was using the military against, to quell a protest that was guaranteed by the Constitution and things like that. I mean, and using the FBI to go against Martin Luther King and so forth like that. I mean, there's not a lot of integrity within the ranks of people whose job is to do what they're told. It is very rare that someone will stand up and do the opposite. Historically, the only kind of person I can point to was General Smedley Butler, who was chief of the Marine Corps during right at the beginning of Franklin Roosevelt's first term, when the oligarchs of the time, the Henry Fords, the DuPonts, and so forth, who really sympathized with what was happening in Germany and so forth, wanted to have a coup, get rid of Roosevelt, and install their own,
Right.
essentially, a domestic Nazi president who would do exactly the same thing that Hitler was doing and turn the U.S. into a fascist state. They needed somebody to lead their troops. So they looked around and they said, Butler's our guy. They were wrong. Butler whistleblowed on them. And Roosevelt basically said, look, you tried this, you screwed up. And because you're important people to the war, to the recovery of this country, you're going to get in line and you're going to do what I tell you, or you're going to prison. Your call. And of course, they capitulated. And then Smedley wrote a book. I don't remember the title of it, but you can look it up. In which he said every war that the United States has ever fought after the Revolution was just a way to make money for these people. So they picked the wrong guy there. I'm hoping there's a
Yeah.
Smedley Butler. We should be singing this guy's praises. He should be elevated to the best general we ever had, but very few people know about him. Smedley Butler.
Well, it's a tough position to put people in the military in when your commander in chief is saying one thing and it's wrong and it's illegal. Then it trickles down to the generals and down to the brass and then down to the regular soldiers. I I would like to believe that the military would hold true to their oath to the Constitution.
Got
But
time for
when it
another
comes,
story?
yeah, absolutely. But we have a lot of people in politics that aren't following up with what they're supposed to be doing with the Constitution. Yeah, give
No.
us a story. I love the stories.
Okay. Well, when I was in basic training, this was somewhat after the My Lai massacre came out, all the details of that, right?
Right, right,
So they marched us to this theater, and we went in, and we're going to see a movie. Hooray! Terrific. But it turns out to be this little film they showed us, and it reenacted something like the My Lai massacre, right, where these soldiers turn on these civilians and kill them. The message of the movie, and it was reinforced afterward by speakers, that as an American soldier, you have the obligation to defy an illegal order.
right.
Now, this, of course, puts the onus on the soldier. After it was over, I mean, they were very clear about this. Shooting civilians is not allowed. If somebody orders you to do that, you should not do it, and you should do your best to arrest them, and so forth. So after it was over, I asked this one drill sergeant that I had gotten to know fairly well, and I said, "Is that realistic?" And he's, "Hell no." He said, "You do that in the field, they just shoot you and say
Yeah.
it was the enemy who did it." He said, "No." He said that they're doing that to save face. They got a black eye about My Lai, so they show this, and so they can say later when it happens again that we did our best, we tried to do that. But no, he said, no, anybody who did that in the field would be a fool, because it would come down on you very, very hard, even whistleblowing. There's a movie with Michael J. Fox. I can't remember the name of it, but it's based, and Sean Penn, I think, is the bad guy, but it's based on real um,
Real
events.
situation.
Yeah, in which the guy was basically pilloried, who who told the truth, right? This is the truth of it. So it has to be somebody higher up, like a Smedley Butler, one of the member of the Joint Chiefs, who would say to his fellows, "This has got to stop, or we don't have a democracy anymore." One thing learned being in the military is very conservative, and a lot of the people in the military very religious, from the sergeant, especially the middle, the enlisted men. The sergeants and so forth who really run the military. They tend to be very religious, very Christian. Let's put it that way. Fundamentalist is a lot of them, and so forth. So who knows? It really depends on the makeup of Joint Chiefs at the time and whether they can agree. I've heard there's a background thing going on the right that they will remove Trump based on the 25th Amendment at some point, so that J.D. Vance will advance to the presidency, and they will install an even more egregious vice president who will actually run the show. Who that might be, I don't know, but a Cheney-like figure to Bush, who President Cheney was really the one who ran the president's office during that whole both terms of. Hang on one second.
While he's
I'm so
walking away,
sorry to disturb you. Maisie
I will
wants in,
say,
and I'm having a reaction from cooking.
Okay.
Can you bring her in?
Yeah.
okay,
Cool. Hang on one second. I'll be back.
all right. I'm going to talk a bit.
Okay.
One of the things that he's having dog trouble, so he's got to take care of the dog. And you know what I've always said? I've always
You
said
okay?
I'll be
I like
okay. I'm
all
just so sorry. I
I,
just don't want to.
I
That's
like
okay.
all dogs better than
It's in the.
I like all dogs. Okay, I just muted him for a second so we don't hear the conversation. But I like all dogs better than most people. And so if you got a problem with a dog, Eric comes on. He's got Cecilia. Uh, Jay's got the cat. And I wish I had a dog, but I don't have a dog because where I live doesn't allow for dogs, at least here in Minnesota. Georgia, I guess I could have a dog, but I'm not down there enough to do that. Um, but anyway, what we were talking about the military, and this is my concern with the military. Ed suggests that these military folks are very religious and they are very conservative, and that's fine. If you're truly religious and you're truly Christian and you're truly conservative, it's not the way I would see it, but I can respect that. The question here is, are they more religious and more conservative than they are loyal to the Constitution? I think in real terms, the Constitution has to take over for um, the other beliefs. In order for this country to run properly, in order for this country to be democratic, we have to we 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 have to stay strong with the Constitution. And this is the big issue that I'm seeing. We're seeing Republican members of Congress that aren't willing to stand up for the Constitution. I have to believe right now, with the way things are going with the economy and the deportations and the courts and all this stuff, I have to believe that there is a certain amount of talk going on amongst the Republicans about what we're going to do with Donald Trump. I have to believe that. Um, okay, I muted you and I'm trying to figure out how to unmute you.
There we go. How's that?
There we go. We're
Yeah.
unmuted.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, you got the dog in there now?
Yeah. Yeah. She's
All right, good.
okay. Yeah. Yeah. We're all good.
Good to hear. Now, what I was saying before you came back is it's fine, well and good that people are conservative and religious and such, but are they more religious and more conservative than they are loyal to the Constitution? And what we've
Generally
been seeing in
not.
the well, that's the point. Yeah. So then what's
Mhm.
the point of the Constitution if you're not going to follow it?
But this is the thing, most people don't know what the Constitution says, and they tend to listen to the one they like. Let's put it that
Right,
way. Um, I think Trump had a kind of a pre-approved base before he was anybody, and a lot of it has to do with that the country never really healed from the Civil War, and the right wing has always been able to marshal that ill feeling left over from that conflict and use it politically.
right,
So that they always try to make it that anything liberal is northern, it's elite, it has nothing to do with the common people and so forth. And this plays really big in the South, but it also plays in the West. It plays rural. Let me put it
right,
that way. And part of the problem is that rural states, states that are primarily rural with a few large cities and so forth, the rural countryside, people don't see Jewish people. They don't see Black people. They don't see immigrants in large numbers and so forth. So it's very easy for them to think of these people as evil because that's what these conservative people keep feeding them. They're eating our dogs and cats. You know,
yeah,
they're coming to rape and kill. All of this stuff that Trump regularly throws out there. That these are evil people, they're mental, they come from mental institutions, blah, 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 blah. They really eat this shit up. And they think they are the real Americans. And of course, they're not. They're just, they have really no real grasp on any sort of understanding of the Constitution any more than they do with the religion that they practice, which is
right.
so far from Christianity that it's not even in the same universe.
No,
Uh,
it's definitely not.
I
But
saw this morning a guy had posted something from the Old Testament, and I pointed out to him that has nothing to do with Christianity. That's Jewish mythology. You know, it has nothing at all to do with Christianity. Why are you even putting that up to? It has something to do with Sodom and Gomorrah or something like that. It has nothing to do with Christianity any more than well. Anyway, that's beside the point. But
well,
uh,
I mean, that's the problem we have with the Constitution and the problem we have with the Bible. People
yes,
read something into it and they twist it and they pervert it to somehow support whatever weird fucking idea they have. And that's the problem. You know, we have constitutional originalists,
hmm,
originalists, and they say, well, they don't mention abortion in there, so that's why we shouldn't have it. Yet, when they talk about deporting somebody without due process, they say, well, they're illegals. Well, the
hmm.
Constitution in its original form says anybody in America gets due process. It doesn't say you have to be a citizen or a non criminal. I mean, how do you even determine whether somebody's a criminal or not without fucking due process?
Exactly, exactly. That's the point. And you don't have to be a lawyer to be able to read the Constitution. It wasn't written for lawyers. It was written for people to be able to read it and say, okay, that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
And I always point to the Second Amendment and say it's pretty straightforward. When you start off a regulated militia being blah blah blah, um, that's your most important part. You know, the well-regulated militia is what starts it off. That's what's important. It doesn't say everybody gets a gun because that's
no.
what they would have said if that's what they meant.
Well, and that's the thing about the Second Amendment is it very specifically says a well-regulated militia. Now, I could see them arguing the fact of what is a well-regulated militia, but they just took it way off base and said everybody gets a gun. And that's
Yeah,
not at all what it says, no matter how you want to twist it or how a single word is meant to be. They work so hard to try to get it to support what they believe. And I think that's where Donald Trump's success has been. Donald Trump says a lot of things. He's always been the champion of the poor, downtrodden people that have been held down by the government, that haven't had a say. They're usually poor, they're usually in red states. And when one guy stands up and says, I don't like the government either, I'm going to fight back for you, and has no way and no strategy of doing it, they just jump on board because they're desperate for anybody to be on their side. And Donald Trump is acting like he's on their side, even though he's not. So they've been completely hoodwinked. They bought into it because they feel this is their only option to fight back against the government.
Absolutely. And a couple more examples from my home territory here. Okay. Recently, well, a while back, the new county mayor wanted to put some zoning requirements in the county. Right now, there are none. If I want to
Right.
build a house in the county, there's nothing to constrain me from doing that any way I want to, you know? And here's a good example. The guy built a really nice house on top of a hill, and then this guy moved in below him and put in a hog farm.
Well,
Now that impacted the value of his home because this really nice house now sets upwind from a hog farm. But there was nothing anybody could do about that because there is no zoning. Now, this California cult has just bought 60 acres of land, and they plan to establish this cult homeland thing there and bring in 2,000 people into this rural setting that's not set up with sanitation or anything like that. And everybody's screaming to high heaven now, oh, we can't allow this bullshit, blah, blah, blah. But there's nothing they can do because there is no zoning. The people sold the land. These people bought it. They can do any damn thing with it they want to.
wow. And if they were going to put a church in there, it
Mhm.
would have been fine. But the
Oh,
fact that
yeah.
these people are different, and who
Yeah.
knows who the fuck they are. How long do you think before the Republicans say, I've had enough? Because you and I were talking about this before. It's gone on way longer than I ever imagined. These guys have been pretty solidly behind Donald Trump with some pretty horrible shit that's going on, from his crimes to his corruption to, of course, the economy. Uh, I would have thought by now they're thinking ahead to 2026 and they realize they're in trouble now.
I hope so. And I hope there are enough free and fair election or mechanisms that we can actually have fair elections for the midterms because when the midterms come, I think there's a very good chance that we will have a Democratic Senate and a Democratic
I do too.
House, and that a lot can be done after that point. But um, I think a lot of Trump's executive orders will eventually be found to be bogus by the courts, as they already have been in large part.
Yeah.
I know that even the Supreme Court now seems to be moving in the direction of saying we got to rein this shit in. That's
Yeah.
what I'm seeing. That's what I'm hoping anyway. But I got fooled with the election. I thought we had that one in the bag, and it didn't work out that way. I'm still not sure it wasn't stolen by Elon Musk's money. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty convinced that's what's happened. I notice Pete Buttigieg right now has pretty much declared his candidacy for president because he's coming out with this let's cancel the electoral college in a big way, which is what gave us George Bush, which is what gave us Trump the first time and probably the second time. It's got to be done away with. It was just a compromise with the South anyway. It's long served its it never really had. It was a compromise to keep the country together. Period. Right. And
Yeah.
it was never really a good thing, and it gave us presidents that we should never have had. So it's time for it to go. I'm hoping that's the case, but there's a lot of money out there that doesn't want anything to change. We have to see, maybe seeing what happened to Elon will filter to Bezos and the others. When they see that Elon can fall, I noticed Canada just um, disengaged from Starlink, so that's got to hurt. They when they see that starting to happen, maybe they will realize that maybe we better pull back and get on the right side for a change.
You know, If it were me and I was in their position, the moment I saw that threat, I would pull back. I wouldn't want it to happen and then pull back. It'd be like Elon Musk. Elon Musk should have stayed out of it completely, or at least pulled back earlier. But now it's too late. It's too fucking late. Jeff Bezos wants to support Donald Trump, but this Chinese tariff thing and empty shelves is going to affect him too. It's going to
Yeah.
affect him financially, the stability of his company, and it just surprises me that they're willing to push it to the nth degree to do this because in terms of with China, I think we're too late now. First of all, the supply chain has already been disrupted.
Yeah.
Even if they did something today to fix it, it'd take months to get it back on track. We're going to have those empty shelves. We're going to have those problems. And people are going to be freaking the fuck out because it's not just the empty shelves. It's the businesses going out of business. It's the people losing jobs. It's the people that won't have any fucking money at all. And then they'll be in love with all the Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security because that's the only way these fuckers will be able to make money.
Yeah. Well, when I took my Honda in for a recall deal a while back, and I asked the service manager, "What do you think about these tariffs? Is it gonna?" He said, "We're scared to death." He said, "Not for the price of the car." He said, "We can adjust that to a degree." You know, he said, quite frankly, we don't sell that many $60,000 vehicles anyway, right?
Right, right,
It's the 30 and 40. That's where our money, that's our sweet spot, you know. And
right.
we can adjust, we can, you know, in the short term, we can adjust. He said it's the parts. He said it's the parts. If you've got a guy who's got a car sitting by the side of the road and you tell him you're going to have to wait a month for the part, he's not going to be happy. You know, and he said, but that's what we're looking at here. He says, already I'm having trouble with parts. He said, you got this recall notice in November, right? And I said, yeah. And I called immediately. They said, we'll call you when we got the parts. Well, here it was February when they got the part in. And he said, the reason is that the supply chain from China has never really recovered totally from
Right.
COVID. And he said, and now that's just going to make it even worse.
Well, and the way it's going to uh, affect other businesses, like on my wife's car, we bought a couple of years ago, a year ago, or something like that, and we bought a warranty where everything's covered. I didn't want to fuck with anything, and we
Yeah.
bought it when everything was at such a price. Now, if I go in and I need a part for that car, I'm not going to pay for it, but they are. They are going to
Yeah.
take a beating
Yeah.
having to fix my car because of the warranty I have it, buying parts that may be uh, 145% higher than they were before. I mean, it's going to be a problem for a lot of businesses, and it does trickle down.
Well, you know what gets me is before, you know, when he was running, Trump was selling this idea we're all going to be drinking free bubble up and eating rainbow stew, right? Day one. And now it's, well, there's going to be pain. Maybe the kids won't get as many toys for Christmas. You know, this kind of bullshit, right? Now that reality hits home. I don't know who sold him on the idea of tariffs. It certainly wasn't him. It's probably this cluck that he's got in his commissary as Commerce
Navarro,
Secretary. Oh yeah, okay, I forgot about Navarro. Yeah, that's probably it. Um, but it's stupid. It was always stupid. It's always been stupid. And the news media, at least, generally says that now. They don't say it's stupid, but they just say no. The foreign countries don't pay the tariffs. They just don't. You know, the people bringing the product in will pay the tariff and then they will pass it along to you in the form of, which makes it a huge tax increase, in other words.
absolutely. And you know, the thing is, if the media had said that prior to the election, we might be in a different situation. That's why I
Yeah.
hold the media culpable in this whole situation. But Navarro was on TV recently, and they were talking about the shrinking of the GDP, how it went down. Navarro was trying to sell how that's a good thing.
Uh-huh.
And this is what he said. He said, you know, if you took all the negative things of the tariffs out of it, the economy's pretty strong. Yeah, of course, you dumb fuck. Who put the tariffs in? So all the negative was put in for Donald Trump, and he's living off of Navarro, a guy who spent time in prison. A guy, you know how they found Navarro?
Mm-mm.
When Donald Trump was trying to sell the tariffs, he told his son-in-law, "Go on Amazon, find some books about tariffs to support what I'm saying." And they came across this um, uh, Pete Navarro writing a book, a goofball. He wasn't even successful at it. So they brought that in. Now, Pete Navarro, when he writes his book, he always references uh, an expert that
Yeah,
tells him all this stuff. And in this book, the expert's name is Ron Vera,
yeah,
Varra. They did some investigation. This guy does not exist. The name is nothing more than an anagram of his last name, and it's all bullshit.
yeah. Of course
He
it
won't
is.
he goes to jail for contempt of Congress or court or whatever it was.
Congress.
And
Yeah.
this guy is still the leading trade advisor to fucking Donald Trump. He's a charlatan. He's full of shit. And Donald Trump does not care because he agrees with what Donald Trump thinks. And Donald Trump is an idiot.
Well, and the other guy you see talking about the economy now a lot, I can't remember his name. He's got like a scraggly short beard and he's
Lutkin,
balding. And that's
Lutnick.
him. That's him. Okay, yesterday, they're talking about I forget if it was the jobs report. It was something that was a negative, or the GDP. It was it was the GDP was negative. It had gone
Right.
down. And he goes, and his answer was, well, we control we control the statistics. So what we're going to do is separate government spending from the rest of the economy, and that will make it look better. Basically, he said we're going to manipulate the figures. That is his solution to a very real decline in GDP. We're going to modify the statistics that show what's really happening to make it look better than it was. And he says this without even realizing what he's telling us, that you're just going
Now,
to cheat, then you're going to
you're
lie,
go-
you're going to say something is different than it actually is.
it's very frustrating watching Scott Bessent and this Lutnick guy talk. These guys are
Mm-hmm.
successful businessmen, millionaires, maybe billionaires. They know all of this is bullshit. They
Mm-hmm.
know it won't work. They wouldn't have become billionaires had they known otherwise. They know it's bullshit, but they continue to support whatever Donald Trump says. It's like taking people who know better and having a dumb fuck lead the way and them happily doing it. It's frustrating. I don't know what they hope to gain from it. Is it just simply the tax break? Is that what it is? That's fucking crazy.
I think that's part of it. I think it's more the regulation than the tax breaks. Quite frankly, I mean, you see um, Trump pardoning people who do atrocious things. Yeah, he just does it automatically now.
Right, right.
If they're a business person and they do something that's terrible, he just goes ahead and pardons them. And they want to remove all government regulation. They want the wild, wild west again, like it used to be. I can make this product that okay, I'll have to pollute all the water in the area, but I don't care because though I don't know those people. They want to get rid of anything that has to do with making us safer or less poverty stricken or in any way protected. They want to remove the government from the protection business and turn them into the exploiting business, which is the way it was when McKinley was president, that Trump seems to idolize because somebody told him to. Back then, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, these people, they could do anything they wanted. Kentucky was a very beautiful state, and then they come in and destroy it and kill the people and poison them. And they do this for a century until there's finally a little bit of pushback. And they can't stand that they lose $1 because somebody doesn't die.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We're coming toward the end here. I just wanted to bring up one thing. Mike Waltz was part of the reason why a journalist was brought into that Signalgate thing. He was the head or he was a
Hmm.
national security advisor. He's gone now. And I thought, oh, maybe somebody woke up and held somebody responsible just to cover for Pete Hegseth. But then Donald Trump says, oh, no, we're going to make him the ambassador to the UN.
Yeah.
And that seems really stupid to me. First of all, they're trying to say we gave him a promotion. That was not
Yeah.
a promotion, that was a
No.
demotion. But more importantly than that, Donald Trump throwing this guy a bone by making him or nominating him for the ambassador to the UN. And did he forget that there's going to have to be confirmation hearings? The mother,
Apparently.
the motherfucker that did Signalgate is going to have to sit in Congress and ask questions about Signalgate.
Yeah.
It's going to be fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, well, nobody ever said Trump was smart, or at least I didn't.
No,
Nobody who's honest ever said Trump was smart. It's funny too that position is open because Stefanik, the congresswoman that he wanted to appoint, they couldn't because they knew that they would
they'd
lose
lose
her
her.
vote. They would
Right.
lose her vote, so they had to leave her where she was. So they had this convenient place to stuff this guy, right? I just want to make one more point, and that you ask about the media, and when it comes, what did they hope to gain by lying? They gain time, and they obfuscate. They muddy the waters because, quite frankly, there are very few reporters uh, or really any individuals who have the understanding to go toe to toe with somebody and say that's a lie because.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Warren can do it. A few others can do it because they really understand how all of this works. But your general average reporter, even the really good ones, just don't know. So if they throw something out there, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. It's long if they sound like they really believe it, then the reporter can go back research it later on. But the moment is gone. Okay, the idea
Yeah.
is just to keep the smoke and mirrors going. And if the networks were honest, they would have economic experts right there all the time. You would never go into an interview unless you had an economic expert standing right here who can refute that in real time. And the same thing with anything else. They would cultivate a group of experts in whatever that they can rely on a regular basis. That's what needs to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I know you got shit to do. I got a couple things I got to do, but I appreciate you coming in and talking and setting some things straight. I know people look forward to hearing from you. The elder statesman of the Rational Boomer podcast, that is Ed. Thank you very much for coming in.
You bet. I always have a great time. Thanks, Mike.
All
And
right.
then don't just take my opinion either, because sometimes it is opinion. Look it up. That's what we have to do. We have to research. Don't take anybody's. Generally, Mike and I do our very best to tell you the truth, but we may screw up once in a while.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
research it yourself. It's not that hard, but know that a lot of the search engines and so forth are geared toward uh, not the truth. So you may
Yeah,
have to dig a
bullshit.
little bit deeper.
And I just want to tell folks if you should check out Ed's stuff on TikTok and YouTube. Go to at Holler Troll, HOLLERTROLL. You can find him on TikTok. You can find him on YouTube. I guess Reelin in the Years, REALIN years. You can find
Yeah.
him there. If you haven't checked his stuff out, you're missing it. It's interesting. It's historical. He tells great stories. By all means, check it out.
Thanks, Mike.
No problem. For those of you listening, thanks for taking the time. I hope you have a great day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.